Welcome to the 700 Club. Get ready to hold on to your wallet. Skyrocketing heating costs this winter will be burning through your budget, and there's no holds barred on gas prices.
Maybe the worst part of this energy crisis, it could have been avoided. Why are experts calling these soaring costs the revenge of old energy? Dale Hurd explains.
If you haven't started setting money aside for your heating bills this winter, it's time to start. Experts are forecasting heating oil could rise more than 40%, natural gas 30%, propane more than 50%, and electricity 6%. And if it's a bad winter, prices could go even higher, with propane costs doubling.
Going forward this year, there are no signs of these prices coming down.
Add to that rising gasoline prices.
We will have $4 a gallon gasoline shortly, as long as demand stays like it is.
The energy crisis is the result of a number of factors, including policy decisions by lawmakers. Some would say bad policy decisions. It's a perfect storm of increased global demand and low supply, thanks in part to the pandemic, and in part because of a war on fossil fuels in Washington.
Now, all of a sudden, demand is coming back, but there isn't the supply to meet it.
Call it the revenge of old energy, meaning the fossil fuel industry, which is being increasingly abandoned by investors because of the push among lawmakers for new green energy sources.
So basically, this political movement has declared war on fossil fuels, and a lot of people have concluded in the industry, and also people who just are investors, that this sector has no future.
A worldwide energy crunch is also to blame. China has had rolling blackouts from an energy shortage, and Europe has seen natural gas prices rise 350%. Europeans are probably wishing they hadn't done this to their nuclear power industry. Energy experts say Europe is being forced to return to coal, a dirty word among environmentalists, to generate the power it needs. Even cheap, abundant, clean-burning natural gas has fallen out of favor because of a belief it causes climate change.
We have the largest nat gas reserves in the world, but we don't even want to think about it because in the mentality of the left, it's still a fossil fuel and they don't want any parts of it.
But while green energy may sound like a good idea to some, the world will discover this winter just how much it still needs fossil fuels. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Now, I'm not sure what to make of all of this other than you go back 18 months and the price of oil was actually negative. You had to pay money to have people take it because the demand literally went away. So that was a time where all the cruise ships stopped, all the airplanes stopped. Everyone was hunkered down at home. People weren't driving to work. People weren't even driving anywhere. And so as a result, the demand was near zero. And if you're an oil producer, you had no place to put it. So you stopped production. The same with a lot of the other fuels. There was a complete shutdown. So is it any wonder as demand is back, the supply hasn't caught up, and in that kind of environment, you're going to see an increase in prices. We're all going to pay the price at the pump, and it's going to be a tough winter for a lot of us, and that fuel price is now going to get baked into everything else we consume because it's just going to get passed on. So we're going to see an inflationary cycle. In economic theory, the cure for low prices is low prices, and the cure for high prices is high prices. So high prices will encourage people to ramp up production in order to sell at the high price, and that in turn will create oversupply and then lead to lower prices. But we're just right now in the middle of a really bad cycle, and you compound that with supply chain disruption, overall scarcity, it's going to be really hard on our economy and really hard on your personal budget. In other news, President Biden is dialing down his ambitious agenda to fund massive social spending programs. The question now, what will stay and what will go? Well, John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. President Biden and congressional Democrats are considering dramatic cuts to their bill. The president lowered the price tag from $3.5 trillion to a little less than $2 trillion. As senior national affairs correspondent Heather Sells reports, the package would still be a massive expansion in social services and climate change initiatives.
The president is scaling back his ambitions with political realities in sight. He has no Democratic votes to spare, and there's pressure to reach an agreement by Halloween and before the president heads to Scotland for UN climate talks. Wednesday, he returned to his birthplace to sell his latest plan.
This has been declared dead on arrival from the moment I introduced it. But I think we're going to surprise them because I think people are beginning to figure out what's at stake.
The new version will likely eliminate a clean energy plan, a path to permanent legal status for some immigrants, and plans for tuition-free community college. It's also likely to put a deadline on the child tax credit, extending it for only a year. Still in the mix, paid family leave, childcare subsidies, and $500 billion for climate change. The White House is also considering new ways to pay for the proposal. One idea is to drop increases on corporate tax rates while adding a tax on capital gains.
These bills are not about left versus right, or about moderate versus progressive, or anything that pits one American against another. These bills are about competitiveness versus complacency.
But Biden still faces opposition, even within his own party, from Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Wednesday, the magazine Mother Jones reported that Manchin is considering leaving the party, reports he forcefully denied.
I can't control rumors, and it's bull spelled with a B-U-L-L capital B.
Manchin objects to a quick transition away from fossil fuels, but more progressive Democrats want exactly that, and especially before the president appears at one of the most ambitious climate change meetings in years.
The Senate must put together a climate package that is something that Joe Biden can say to the rest of the world that we are the leaders and not the laggards.
Before he leaves next week, the president wants Dems to agree to a package framework and to pass the $1 trillion traditional infrastructure bill, which strengthens roads, bridges, and internet. Heather Sells, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Heather. In other news here in Washington, Senate Republicans blocked a Democrat-led federal voting rights bill. The act would have set nationwide standards for voting access, like same-day registration, a minimum of 2 weeks of early voting, and making Election Day a national holiday. Republicans called the bill a federal takeover of elections. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said it sends government money to political campaigns, allows Washington to interfere in state redistricting, and takes voter ID requirements out of the hands of local officials. The measure lacked the 60-vote minimum needed to overcome a Republican filibuster during Wednesday's failed vote. Well, the CDC panel meets today to consider approving booster shots for the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Wednesday, the FDA authorized the boosters for certain people. In the case of Moderna, those 65 and over or who are at greater risk of infection are eligible for the booster 6 months after their second shot. For J&J, anyone over the age of 18 can get the booster 2 months after taking the single dose. The agency also announcing it is safe and effective to mix and match vaccines. Meanwhile, the White House is releasing its plan to distribute the Pfizer vaccine to 28 million kids between the ages of 5 and 11. The CDC expected to approve that regimen in the coming weeks. Well, turning overseas, American troops in Syria were targeted by what's being called a, quote, deliberate and coordinated attack by drones and other weapons. U.S. Central Command, though, fortunately reporting no injuries. The U.S. base in El Tanaf, Syria, is near the border with Jordan, an area that's seen heavy fighting between U.S. and ISIS forces. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but Iranian-backed Shiite militia often target U.S. assets in the region. In nearby Israel, an exciting discovery. A scuba diver found an ancient sword off its northern coast. As CBN's Chris Mitchell reports, experts say it dates back to the time of the Crusaders.
Israeli Shlomi Katzin was scuba diving in the Mediterranean Sea off the northern coast of Israel when he discovered the 900-year-old sword.
The most interesting thing is that this is one of the first, or as I know, complete sword that ever found in Israel and in a very good preservation. We know that usually under the water, the materials, the archaeological materials survive better than on land.
Katzin also found stone anchors and pottery fragments on the seabed. The finds were apparently uncovered by the waves and undercurrents that shifted the sand. Fearing the sword could be stolen or swept away by the currents, Katzin took it ashore and turned it over to the Israel Antiquities Authority. Katzin received a certificate of appreciation for good citizenship.
Because of the area where the sword was found, not so far from the Crusader castle of Atlit, with a Templar castle during the early 13th century, we are assuming that it belonged to the Crusader period because of the size, because of the other artifacts that belong to the site.
The Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099 AD and set up their kingdom here. They ruled the area of the Holy Land for nearly 200 years.
Following the weight of the sword, we assume that the knight that hold this sword was very strong, because to fight with this weight and this size of sword, it wasn't so easy. Even today, to hold it, it's heavy.
The sword has been sent to the IAA laboratories in Jerusalem. Researchers will X-ray it and begin to clean off encrusted shells and ocean debris. Then they'll decide how best to preserve it. The IAA says every artifact that's found helps to piece together the historical puzzle of the land of Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Gordon, that sword looks like it's in pretty decent shape, considering it's almost 1,000 years old.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the Crusaders' swords that's inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. For that period of time when the Crusaders ruled Jerusalem, they had kings of Jerusalem, and one of their swords is inside that one of the chapels there. It's incredible, the archaeology of the Holy Land. But you go back another 1,000 years, and that archaeology of the Second Temple, go back 3,000 years, the archaeology of the First Temple, the archaeology of the New Testament period, the archaeology of the Old Testament period. Here's a wonderful fact. There's no archaeological discovery in Israel that has ever disproved the Bible. All of them prove the Bible and prove the history of the Bible and the accounts written down in the Bible. Do they prove the miracles? No, because archaeology won't have a record of the miracles. But the Bible does, and the history in the Bible is backed up again and again by archaeology. If you want to know more about the archaeology of the Bible, I encourage you to get Written in Stone. Our latest one is called Secrets of the Temple. In here, you'll see the wonderful discoveries that are coming from the Temple Mount, as well as from the Magdala stone that was discovered on the shores of Galilee, which shows what the temple looked like. Well, even the articles inside the temple. It's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. All you have to do to get it is to call us, 1-800-700-7000. You can also go to our website, cbn.com/writteninstone. We'll send you a DVD if you'd like it. You can also get instant streaming access right now. All you have to do is say, here's my gift of any dollar amount. Now, your gift will go into the production. We're doing a documentary right now on the archaeology of the Bible. How did we get the Bible? And what's the record, both within the history itself, what is written in the Bible about itself, as well as what's written in stone. So if you want to help that production, give a gift of any dollar amount. We'll send you instant streaming access to Written in Stone, The Secrets of the Temple.